Think about every chair you have ever seen. Some had 4 legs, some had 3. Some had arms, some didn't. Some were wooden, some metal, some plastic. Some were beautiful, and some were ugly, and some were somewhere in between. Every single one was different from every other one in some specific way, and yet you recognized all of them as chairs, immediately, without thinking, without consulting a definition or running a comparison. Something in you knew. That is a chair, the moment you saw it, regardless of how different it looked from every other chair you had ever encountered. Plato thought that was one of the most important and most overlooked facts about human experience, that we are able to recognize imperfect instances of things because we have access, somehow, somewhere, to the perfect version, the form, the ideal chair that no physical chair has ever fully been, but that every physical chair is trying, imperfectly, to approximate. That idea, the theory of forms, is the foundation of everything Plato believed about reality, knowledge, beauty, justice, and the good life. Tonight we go inside it, and we ask what it means that the world you see may be the least real thing about it. If you watched our video on the allegory of the cave, you already have the image that gives the theory of forms its most vivid expression. The prisoners watching shadows on the wall, taking those shadows for reality, never seeing the actual objects casting them, or the fire behind them, or the sunlight beyond the cave entrance. The theory of forms is the philosophical architecture underneath that image. The explanation for why the shadows are shadows, why the physical world we experience through our senses, is, in Plato's view, a pale and imperfect reflection of something more real. The argument begins with a simple observation. Everything in the physical world is impermanent and imperfect. Every beautiful thing will eventually decay. Every just action exists within circumstances that could have made it unjust under slightly different conditions. Every circle drawn by human hands is slightly irregular, not quite a perfect circle, only an approximation of one. And yet we have concepts of beauty, justice, and the perfect circle that are not derived from the imperfect instances we encounter. We know that a drawing is almost a circle, which means we have access to the idea of what a perfect circle would be, even though we have never seen one. We recognize beauty even in things that are not perfectly beautiful. We recognize justice even in situations where it is imperfectly realized. Where does that knowledge come from? How do we have access to perfect concepts that the physical world never perfectly instantiates? Plato's answer was the forms, eternal, unchanging, perfect archetypes that exist in a realm beyond the physical world, the realm of pure, intelligible reality, accessible not through the senses, but through reason. The form of circle is the perfect circle that no drawing has ever fully been. The form of beauty is the perfect beauty that every beautiful thing participates in, partially and imperfectly. The form of the good, the highest form, the source of all other forms, is the ultimate principle underlying all of reality, the philosophical equivalent of the sun in the allegory of the cave. Physical things in this framework are real but less real than the forms. They exist in a kind of middle territory, more real than dreams or illusions, less real than the eternal archetypes they imperfectly embody. The chair you are sitting in right now is a chair, genuinely, actually a chair. But it is a chair by virtue of participating in the form of chair. Its chairness comes from somewhere beyond itself, from the perfect, eternal, unchanging idea of what a chair is. This sounds abstract. It is abstract. Plato was doing something genuinely difficult, trying to explain the relationship between the world we experience and the concepts we use to understand it, between the particular and the universal, between the imperfect instance and the perfect idea. But the implications are not abstract at all. If the theory of forms is right, even partially, even as a useful way of thinking about certain kinds of knowledge, it changes what you think knowledge is, what you think beauty is, what you think justice is, and what you think the goal of a human life should be. Plato made a sharp distinction between knowledge and opinion. Opinion, what he called doxa, is what we have about the physical world. It is reliable enough for practical purposes. You can navigate your life on the basis of what your senses tell you and your experience confirms. But it is not knowledge in the deepest sense, because its objects, physical things, are always changing, always impermanent, always susceptible to being other than they currently are. Knowledge, episteme, is what we have about the forms. It is certain, unchanging, and incorrigible because its objects are eternal and perfect. You cannot be wrong about the form of circle in the way you can be wrong about a particular drawing. Mathematical truths are eternal, not because mathematicians have decreed them, but because they describe the formal structure of reality at its most fundamental level. This distinction matters for education, which Plato considered the most important political project. Education, in his framework, is not the filling of an empty vessel with information about the physical world. It is the turning of the soul, the reorientation of a person's attention from the impermanent and imperfect toward the eternal and real, from the shadows on the cave wall toward the sunlight beyond the entrance. The theory of forms also has profound implications for how Plato understood beauty. Physical beauty, the beauty of a face or a body or a landscape, is real but derivative. It participates in the form of beauty without exhausting it. And the person who is captivated only by physical beauty has stopped at the shadow, rather than following it to its source. In the Symposium, one of Plato's most beautiful dialogues, the philosopher Diotima describes what she calls the ladder of beauty. The person who begins by loving one beautiful body is led, if they follow the logic of their experience, to recognize that all beautiful bodies share in the same beauty. Then to recognize that the beauty of souls exceeds the beauty of bodies. Then to the beauty of knowledge and understanding. And finally, at the top of the ladder, to beauty itself. The form, the pure, eternal, perfect beauty that all beautiful things are imperfect expressions of. This is not the denial of physical beauty. It is the tracing of physical beauty to its source. The recognition that what moves you in a beautiful face is something that the face is carrying rather than something the face has invented. Something that was there before the face and will be there after it. The most personally important form, the one Plato spent his career orbiting, was the form of the good. The ultimate principle that gives all other forms their intelligibility and all physical things their value. The philosophical equivalent of the sun, not just another thing that can be seen, but the source of all seeing, the condition under which anything is visible at all. To know the form of the good, to genuinely understand what goodness is, rather than just having opinions about particular good actions, is, for Plato, the highest achievement of human reason, the goal toward which all genuine education points, the thing the philosopher is always climbing toward, imperfectly and never finally reaching, but always moving closer to with each genuine act of understanding. The theory of forms has been attacked, refined, and largely rejected in its original form by most subsequent philosophy. Aristotle, Plato's greatest student, spent considerable energy arguing that the forms were unnecessary, that universals could be found in particular things rather than in a separate realm beyond them, that the perfect circle does not need to exist independently of drawn circles in order to explain why we can recognize imperfect circles as imperfect. The debate between Platonic and Aristotelian approaches to universals has run through philosophy ever since and has not been definitively resolved. The honest position is that we do not fully understand how human beings have access to universal concepts, how we recognize all chairs as chairs, all circles as circles, all acts of justice as just. And Plato's answer, while contested, is still one of the most serious attempts to grapple with the question. But the reason the theory of forms matters beyond the academic debate is what it points at experientially. The moments in human life when something happens that feels more real than ordinary experience. When a piece of music touches something that the specific notes and rhythms seem insufficient to account for. When an act of genuine kindness produces a response that goes beyond appreciation for the specific action. When you encounter a person whose integrity is so complete that it feels less like a personal quality and more like a glimpse of something that person is carrying. Plato would say that in those moments you are catching a glimpse of the form, that the music or the kindness or the integrity is participating more fully than usual in something beyond itself, and that your recognition of it is not merely aesthetic or emotional, but a genuine moment of contact with a higher order of reality. You do not have to accept the full metaphysical architecture of the theory of forms to find that observation useful. The experience it is pointing at is real. The sense that some things are not just good or beautiful by convention or agreement, but good or beautiful in a way that would be true regardless of whether anyone recognized it. That intuition is what Plato was trying to systematize. And 2,500 years later, it has not been definitively explained away. The connection to the allegory of the cave is now complete. The cave is the physical world, the world of impermanent, imperfect things that our senses give us access to. The shadows are the images and appearances that most people take for reality. The fire is the sun of the physical world, the source of the sensory light that illuminates the cave, and the sunlight beyond the cave entrance, the blinding, overwhelming, gradually comprehensible light that the philosopher climbs toward, is the form of the good, the ultimate reality, the source of all other reality, the philosopher's journey, the whole of Plato's educational program, the whole point of genuine philosophical inquiry, is the slow, painful, never completed ascent from the shadows toward that light, from opinion toward knowledge, from the impermanent toward the eternal, from the copy toward the original. Think again about the chair, the ordinary object you sit in without thinking about. Every chair you have ever seen was imperfect. Every one was temporary. Every one will eventually break or be discarded, or simply stop being what it was. And yet you have always known, without being taught it, what a chair is supposed to be, what it is reaching toward, what it would be if it were fully itself. Plato thought that knowledge, that quiet, certain, pre-reflective recognition of what things are reaching toward, was the most important thing about you. The evidence that your mind has access to something the physical world can only imperfectly express. Whether he was right is a question philosophy is still sitting with. But the question itself, What is the relationship between the imperfect world we experience and the perfect ideals we somehow know, is one of the most beautiful questions human beings have ever asked. And Plato asked it first.